we can see you, I think. So let's double check if we can see your sharing screen. If you could double check if that works.
I'll try and share now.
That would be great.
Share screen. I go straight into. I'll share my full screen.
Okay, we can see your PowerPoint, so that's great. Even in the also in the full screen mode. That's great.
Yeah, awesome.
Fantastic. Do you want us to ask any questions that appear in the QA on chat window during the session, or you want to keep all the questions once?
So
once
the idea is kind of to run through it in two parts. So I don't mind if someone's got a question, they can ask it. So if a question comes through, just stop me. I'll gladly stop and we can just carry on from there. I did leave about 5 minutes for questions in between. So if folks aren't going to use that, I'll use it for something else. I want to have about a 5-minute break, about 35 minutes in. So 35 to 40 minutes is a small break. I don't know if that's okay or.
That's fine.
It's your session.
Exactly.
Folks gonna be crying. They're gonna be like, "Oh no, my brain! What's happening?"
If you run over, we'll just unplug you. But anything else goes.
That's fine. I've timed it. I shouldn't run over, but yeah, it should be fine. If questions come up, just ask. Just interrupt me. I'm used to that.
I was just about to tell the greatest Kevin Klein himself that he was just about to run over, and like 5 seconds before he did, he was like, "Okay, I'm done." So
done.
Okay then.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So it's yeah. I don't know that the topic is quite challenging because it's not a lot of folks speak about it with good reason because it bores people to death. So it's see what happens. What other expectations should I'll read the intro and all the stuff. I got no problem with that.
Cool.
What else do I need to do? Entertain folks.
Can you sing?
No. I believe I can, but that doesn't mean that I
believe I can. No.
No, I do have a small demo planned for the folks, so I'm going to show them my documentation. Yeah, that's going to be exciting. Yeah.
I've never seen documentation. That will be interesting.
Oh, I know.
Everyone speaks of it. Everyone wants me to write some. I have no idea what it looks like.
You know,
this documentation thing that people talk about.
Yeah. Is my lighting okay? Let me just throw some more light on me.
Yeah.
No, that's fine. This looks good.
Just getting the camera van.
I think your camera has capability to just adjust to the level of light. So
well, I know it does, but I feel like there isn't enough light in here. Oh, got a nice little piece of light behind my head. Let's move my desk a wee bit. That should work a bit better. Well, I'll switch it off. Ah, the light's troubling me. That's fine.
Don't worry about this. We can see you very well.
I think I got disconnected there for a moment. All right. Well, this is going on. Probably just neaten this up a wee bit.
I'm gradually starting to see more and more people on Windows 11 now. Is it working out for you?
It's Windows.
Yeah. I mean, the big thing seems to be the taskbar in the middle instead of left line, so you can't just instinctively go lower left with the start menu.
But I just see I have my left like the index finger on the start button. It works magic. It's like when you go left, there's nothing. It's like, okay, just press the start button.
Yeah. I'm a Mac person myself, so it's perfectly centered. It just looks very familiar.
My
to me.
condolences. I'm so sorry, dear.
No, not at all.
My wife's got a Mac, and I can't drive the thing to save my life. And she's like, "But you're in IT, you can fix this stuff." I'm like, no, it's a Mac. I'm a Windows guy. I have no idea how this stuff works. It's got its own little challenges.
I can respect that. I'm the same way when it comes to databases. So as a consultant, you will always tell your clients to use the best tool for the job, right? But with me, it's always SQL Server.
Is there anything else? I mean, honestly, yes.
Right. No, I mean, I guess you could use a document database for that, but you'd have to find someone else to do it.
Yeah, you could, but I mean, it's okay. I hit a client last week. It's like they have FileStream, and FileStream just doesn't work, and they've got this huge amount of data in their FileStream, which is why they needed FileStream. I'm like, okay, how large is the data? It's 130 gigs. I'm like, just put it in the database. It's like, why you want your FileStream for this stuff? You know, no one knows how the stuff works. It's magical. So just put it in the database. All your problems go away. And like, but it's so large. Won't we have performance problems? Like, no.
Oh, you said gigs. Sorry, I thought you said
100
terabytes.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
it's 130 gigabytes. Yes. It's like, well, my log table is larger than that. So why don't you just slap it in there? Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, I don't know how many SQL consultants actually are out there that speak with clients. Like in New Zealand, so there's only about a handful, like 6 or 7 consultants that actually work in New Zealand through different companies. So it's I don't really get to speak with many SQL consultants. That's
oh wow.
Yeah.
So you get small. Does everyone know everyone then?
Yeah. That's actually why this was so bad for me, because if you break something, then everyone knows. So if you break a project, everyone's going to be like, oh, he's the one who broke it. Yes, don't hire him. He doesn't know what he's doing. So it's a bit of
I've heard about former colleagues in different industries. There's a specialty real estate industry where there's a specific type of facilities that you broker. And I heard a tale through a colleague of someone who completely messed up a deal, and he literally had to move to another city, like far north in Sweden, because there was no one else who would ever hire him again. Because if you break a real estate deal, that's like $1 billion thing.
Yeah, it's like being
everyone knows everyone.
Everyone knows everyone. It's bad. Oh, yeah. No, it's like that here. Like it's so easy. Just open your front door and you're like, hello everyone, and like everyone's there. So it's yeah.
Or you could just do what all the other Kiwis do, just move to Sydney, right?
Yeah. Good.
Sorry.
Good.
No offense.
But, no, listen. I like everyone's leaving. But I think folks are tired of lockdown down there, so everyone's moving to Australia. You move to Australia, the housing is better, the weather's better, and you get paid more money. So it's like, why would you want to stay?
Cheap. Probably cheap.
No, there's actually Australia has more sheep. Australia has more sheep than New Zealand, so it's like no, it's a fascinating Australia, New Zealand, but that's right. No one else is down here, so there's no one else we can speak about SQL.
I was in New Zealand, must have been 5 years ago now, and I just remember the amazing landscape, the absolutely amazing landscape.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the South Island's amazing. I wouldn't know. I haven't been there, but yeah, it's a great place. And it's nice early morning, so 8:30.
Oh yeah, it's 9:30 in the evening where I am, and Camille, I guess.
8:30 to be precise.
Where are you? I thought you were in Poland.
No, I'm London, based in London. I mean, close to
Okay.
London, based in UK.
I had no idea.
For last 6 years. So yeah,
Sorry.
I'm come from Poland. Yeah, you remember it's pretty correctly, but yeah, I'm living in London. I living in UK, close to
I
London.
only think I've met you abroad.
That's true. That's true.
We're so international.
What is this
Guys,
abroad thing you people speak about? Is that where you can travel? What?
It was a long time ago.
Yeah,
The world ended.
we already forgot about these things, you know.
Yeah.
Right now we are
time.
traveling through the camera. Yeah, it's time. So welcome everybody to Adrian Sullivan. Who is Microsoft SQL Server's principal consultant at Lexel Systems, where he leads managed services and professional project services capability for SQL Server. I hope that this is still valid information, Adrian.
Yeah, last I looked, it was. Yeah.
Over to you. Thank you.
All right, so we're back already. So yeah, thank you all. Just start with some introductions on here. So GroupBy, thank you so much for we have a sponsor slide as well. I'll hit that. GroupBy has been amazing for the folks who are on here and the folks who still have to learn about this. It's amazing. So it's training for professionals by professionals, for the community by the community. It's just awesome. I'll just go through the code of conduct. Yes, can I read through it quick? So for those of you who are new to GroupBy or don't know, GroupBy is harassment-free experience for everyone, regardless of who you are and what makes you you. So we recognize the right of any individual to attend and participate, anyone. This is included but not limited to gender, identity, expression, sexual orientation, disability, physical appearance, body size, race, religion, and any other classification, affiliation, or label. We do not tolerate harassment in any form. For the duration of your engagement with the GroupBy by its programs, you are expected to act appropriately and adhere to this code of conduct. This includes conduct in person and online, at the conference itself, as well as any non-conference programs that may include participants, including talks, workshops, parties, or social media, and any other online forums. GroupBy participants violating these rules may be sanctioned or expelled without a refund, if that applies, at the discretion of the conference organizers. If there's any clarification you need for this, please go to the GroupBy site, groupby.org, code of conduct. That just means we all play nicely together and we all say nice things to one another. It's really important. The SQL community is amazing and we want to keep it that way. So if you just be nice, we'll all be nice and we'll all have an awesome time. So who am I? I'll jump right in. So as Camille said, I'm a principal consultant. Means I'm the one that gets hit with a stick when things go wrong. That's for modern data, so it encapsulates larger than SQL platform plus also Azure capabilities around that. I do work for Lexel Systems in New Zealand, which is one of the largest IT integrators down in this side of the world. And I also have a little site, SQL DBA, where I help folks start up their own managed services practices and professional services stuff around SQL Server. That's handy dandy if you've got nothing else to do. I've been in SQL Server for a wee while. Most of what I do relates to professional services and managed services on SQL. If you don't know what that is, don't worry, I'm still learning. Just means that folks pay us money to take on their risk instead of onboarding that. And I love doing SQL Server projects. It's always been the case, but I've learned some interesting things along the way. So without further ado, our sponsors, they make this happen. Just go on their websites, click on their stuff, just download it, just have fun, get in touch with them. They really make this happen. So without them, we wouldn't be here and you wouldn't be experiencing this with us. So RateGate, SolarWinds, SQL Server Solutions Group, Minion Web, and GroupBy themselves. So much of their time, the volunteers and you guys, participants listening to us, you're also investing in this, so we appreciate everyone involved. The session, I'm going to split into two parts. I'm going to do a little intro, explain what went wrong in my life in the project. I'll open up some questions, have a small break, perhaps 5 minutes, because listening to me all day is I feel for you guys. So just take a coffee break. Then we'll start with the second part. We will go through some learnings. I even have a demo sounds like fun at the moment, but you'll see when we get there, and we'll end up with some more questions if you have any. If you have any questions during the session, just feel free to ask them. Just raise them, Camille will stop me, and I'll just deal with the question. That's the easiest way. If you want to keep it for the question session, it's also fine. So when did this happen? So I remember vividly sitting in a meeting with the head of IT and the lackeys around that, and I like my answer to his questions of why is things not working was, we are looking into it, and I thought it's really clever. I'll say, well, I am looking into it because I'm the principal consultant. So that's when I realized that I don't really know what I was doing. From a technical perspective, yeah, sure. I mean, I had a great idea, and I know how to install SQL Server, and I know how to do these things, but at that stage, I was lost. I didn't know how to convince them of what I thought the problems were, and I thought that the best way to get out of it is just to tell them I will look into it. I would have probably used it depends, but it wasn't the right time to use it depends on them. They were a bit angry, but I said, okay, I'll look into it. And that's kind of around the stage where the conversation started to pivot in a different direction. So I'll get to that a bit later, but that's kind of, I want to set the scene for what got us into that position in the first place. So for those of you who don't do SQL projects, there's probably none, because even if you're a DBA in-house in a company, you're doing SQL projects, you're doing an upgrade, someone's requesting something, you're doing a performance tuning something, it's all little projects. So you have to, if you don't think of it in terms of statement of works, think of it in small little pieces of work that you do. Now, for consultants such as myself, we do the same thing, it's just a little bit larger, and people get a bit more angry if it doesn't work. But it's the same stuff. We do small projects and then larger projects. Everything we do is projects, whether it's a SQL upgrade, whether it's patching, whether it's performance tuning, everything is a project. So in order to kind of give you an idea of why this was such a painful discussion to have, I'm just going to step out a little bit and show you what does a project look like. That's what I call $1 million SQL project. It's actually a bit more than that. So $1 million SQL project looks something like this, where you have the internal client costs. Now that can be massive. You might, as a SQL bit, might be about a quarter of the overall project. So there's hardware upgrades and software upgrades and application upgrades and application lifecycles, which normally drives these things. So you have a core system due for an upgrade, which costs the company millions of dollars, and it's going to take 6 months or 8 months or a year or 2 years to do. And then at some stage, there's a database component that has to come in, and then that's when we come in and we do an uplift. So from an overall perspective, the actual SQL services is only about $500,000. But still, it's a reasonable chunk, but that ties into the hardware deliverables. So you can get the hardware right. If the SQL is wrong, the project fails. So in this particular scope, it was about a $4 or $5 million project. It was the entire project, and the SQL component was roughly a quarter of that. And that's more or less true for most of the SQL projects we do. It's always about a 25% split goes to SQL. So if folks think SQL isn't important, it is. 25% of all the stuff we work on is SQL Server related. In some cases, hardware spends up to 30 or 35% of the hardware spend on projects goes towards SQL platform. SQL is important. That's why we're here. This kind of gives you an idea of what does the project itself look like. There are various components as well that's not in here, such as the client team costs and internal costs for us delivering a solution like this. That's hard to quantify. If you speak with a good project manager, they'll tell you exactly how much it is, but I don't have any access to them now. So for those who kind of unsure of what this would look like, it's about 15 large SQL clusters. That's what we're kind of building. In this case, it would geo-replicated, so across various physical regions. And this is kind of size of project we're talking about. So it's not the one where you want to kind of be stepping into as your very first project. This was this was well down my consulting career, so it would have been something I should have easily managed, but I didn't. The reason for that is there's other moving bits around projects. There are from a contractor perspective, there's the principal consultant, really important. That's the one that gets shouted at when things go wrong. That's where everything focuses on. Inside, from a contracting perspective, as we being the prime contractor, we have project coordinators and we have senior DBAs and we have advisory consultants, because you don't want to go to the client and say, client, how are we supposed to do your security stuff? We heard you need certain encryptions, or, oh, how do we do our firewalling? That's not a discussion you have with the client. That's a discussion you have with your internal resources, so you don't look like you don't know what you're doing. Then you can come up with a nice document and seem like you really understand security, you really understand performance, because these things can become exceptionally complex in large projects. It's not something a client just wants to know that you know, and you being a principal is not just you being a principal or contractor, it's you as an organization supporting them. So you have access to internal resources. With the client side, things become murky because you lose that control. It's not you there to deliver something for them. You're there to make their life easier. So you don't have insight into how their teams operate, what their vendors are like, what their business units are like. You don't see that. You only see that reflected through a project manager or small engagements. So you have to pull a tremendous amount of value from the client as you're progressing this engagement. And it's easy to get lost. It's easy to think that, oh, I know everything. I can do this. I know what CX packets are. I know what latch contention is. I can do this stuff. It doesn't mean that you can. Technical capabilities does not mean that you are good at delivering projects. And that's the core of my mistake. So when I looked at this, when I looked at client engagements, I saw it as very superficial. Oh, there's a project management team. Oh, they have an IT support team. Oh, they have some vendors. And we thought like rushing through this, even though we thought we prepared well, rushing through this got us in a position where we didn't have the right engagement with the vendors that we thought we did. We didn't have the right business units engagement that we thought we had. So that got us into an interesting position, the type of position that you get called into and having to explain to the head of IT why a project of this magnitude is not behaving as expected. So it's kind of a realization moment to go, okay, well, I see where this is going. We all can see that this is going downhill real fast. So how do you recover this? How do you step back again and say, well, okay, now it's a project. Where do we even begin? What do we do? Because this is way outside of what I'm used to. So when I want to look like I know what I'm doing, but I don't. So part of the resolution of this was we actually we made a list of the project, how we saw it holistically, and we said, okay, if this is a project that we're running, which it happened to be, where can it go wrong? Let's extract all the different elements. Let's sit down, make a list, and go through all the things that could go wrong. Is it a timeline thing? Are we late in delivery? That happens all the time. It's okay. It's okay if it does, but you need to communicate it. So we were late on delivery. Okay, all right, okay. Were we? I'm not too sure. We're looking at the resources that we're engaging for this from a project resource perspective. Now, was that working? We asked some questions, and is it the vendors? What could go wrong? If I look at all of these different things, now there are other things that might potentially impact projects. It might be budgetary, it might be outside of the context of the business, it might be COVID, right? So there are things that can impact projects outside of the scope. And we took a lot of time to think of what is the core of what is not working. Is it these are the items that we decided on to say, well, I think I think this is the things that can potentially go wrong in a project. If you have any other questions, just if you guys see something I've missed, please let me know as well. And this is the stuff that went wrong. So see, everything went wrong. All right. So we hit a position where everything that we can think about the project was not behaving as expected. This is not a position that anyone would like to be in, which is why I thought I can speak about this. You don't want to be in front of a client and explaining every single thing of this project that you dreamt up is not working. So your requirements could be out of whack. Our risk was out of whack. I'll go in a bit more detail. So we evaluated every one of these little items and we said, okay, so from this list of possible things that can go wrong, and everything that went wrong, what is the single sentence that we could summarize everything that has gone wrong in this project? What can we condense this down to say, okay, what went wrong on our requirements? Oh, I know what went wrong on our requirements. We missed them. We completely missed requirements, a whole section of them, because we thought, oh, it's just a soft discussion with a client. It's just, oh, they just mentioned they wanted encryption. They didn't mean they wanted it. They didn't say we must have encryption, did they? Well, it turns out that they actually wanted it as a requirement in the deliverables. And we just missed it completely because we weren't paying attention. We were so focused on designing. I was so focused on designing this super cool SQL Server that I missed really important requirements. Now, something like, let's say encryption, that's kind of a key aspect to delivering a project. If you miss that requirement, you can't just afterwards go, oh, we'll just roll up some certificates and all of a sudden we encrypted. There's much more to that. How are you going to do certificate management? Have you thought about that? Or how long are your certificates? What's your life cycle look like? Have you engaged their security team to make certificates? Or is it internally signed? There are so many things around something as simple as encryption. It's not, you can't go halfway through a project and then try and mix and match it and look real clever. Hey, we're gonna encrypt this sucker. It doesn't work that way. So we missed a bunch of requirements. Encryption was one of them. And yeah, there's connectivity, ports, default ports, 1433. Oh, everyone likes 1433. Yes, including hackers. So we don't use 1433. So these are things that we should have done, and we discussed it, and we kind of I dropped the ball. I didn't have this documented. We ignored security risks. So security stuff is really important. We just assumed that this is a normal installation. I didn't ask the questions. I didn't sit down and say, do you have security requirements? Are there specific things that's specific to your business that I haven't seen before? Oh, it turns out there were compliance things that we just missed because who knows about compliance? I'm a DBA, right? It's their job to tell me, isn't it? Isn't it? No, it's not. It's my job as a consultant that they trust, an advisor that they trust, to ask that question. Do you have any compliance considerations, Mr. Client, Mrs. Client? Oh, you do? Wonderful. Can you get me in touch with someone who can outline that? And then we can include it in the requirements because it's really important. When I was looking at vendors are great, right? Vendors don't like availability groups. Vendors don't even like clustering. Vendors like a standalone SQL Server. Vendors don't even speak about like shared services. So this solution had like stacked instances because I like stacking them. Like I'd stack instances all day, every day. I love it. It's amazing. Just abstracts the virtual layers. It's amazing. And vendors just don't like, I need my SQL Server and I need my IP address and I need my SQL Server and only I have access to the SQL Server. So when we were discussing halfway through, when we kind of delivering AGs, spinning them up, distributed AGs, things amazing. And the clients is like, the vendors are like, no. Our solution is not supported in availability groups. You can't do that. SQL 2016, no, we only support SQL 2012. So all of a sudden, It's like it's horrendous. Like, we've planned this. We sat down and we planned this. I made beautiful drawings. They're really pretty visual drawings, amazing. I'm really proud of them. And we made them and we designed this, and the vendors didn't agree with that when we were at the point to agree. Again, should have been captured in our requirements, and it wasn't. When we were talking about this, we missed speaking with key decision makers. And that was really painful, because you think that you're speaking to someone who can make a decision. Meanwhile, they're a project manager. They cannot make a decision. It's their job to make sure that you get your stuff done. So when we ask them questions, we didn't check that if they are the right decision makers. Are they going to sign off on this at the end of the day, or they just being nicey because we all pals and we're all having a great, awesome time together. So we missed some key decision makers. Now, a lot of this stuff, in all fairness, it's not just that it was my failings. This was a failing of a project as a whole. So this is not just me, this was the entirety of the project. But again, as a principle, someone has to stand up and get beaten by the sticks. Someone has to take that. In order to move forward, someone has to say, well, okay, my bad, sorry, let's fix it. Let's get done with this now, because I made a mistake. So when we look at these projects, it is a case where someone has to do that. And if you principal, that's you. That's why you get paid the big bucks. Yeah, that's why you drive a nice car. Yeah, it's not because you're such a nice person. I'm sure you're a lovely person. Like, really, principal consultants out there, you guys are amazing and awesome. But that's not why you're in that position. You're in that position because you have to deal with problems. And you deal with problems by saying, I'm the problem, I'll fix it. You don't deal with a problem by saying, oh, that guy, that's him. He's actually the problem. I know it's really bad. We will keep him separate. You have to deal with this. So when we miss decision makers, the project missed it, but we missed it. It was our responsibility to get to those folks. Right? We had the wrong tools. We thought we were really clever, because if you have fuzzy pants migration tool, it's amazing. It sounds real great. Sales pitch is amazing. You spend the money, but when you actually have to do the migration and it doesn't work and you need support, and there's 3 people in the world who understand this and none of them speak English, it's really hard to actually deliver a solution. So we thought buying expensive tools is amazing. It's really wonderful. We're gonna have these great tools. Turns out it's not as amazing as the label says, because there's support considerations, there's installation considerations. We didn't have the right requirements for installing the service that does the migration, and we couldn't get the firewall ports open for this separate virtual machine at that stage. So we made the wrong decision. We tried to overcomplicate it, tried to put all the bells and whistles, and it broke. A big consideration I've learned from this is the clock speeds. Clock speeds. Yeah, that's great. When you're purchasing hardware, the vendor who sells the hardware. Sorry, it's kind of an aside discussion on this. When a vendor sells you something, it's always the best. It's the most amazing, because their incentive is to sell what's stuck on their shelves, or that their supplier wants them to sell, not what's best for you. Right, so all those lovely emails you get and saying how amazing and you must buy wonderful products, in most cases it's because they can't sell them, or they're moving slowly, or there's a different incentive from the supplier to move that. So when we walked in here, they were looking at 2 gigahertz CPUs. Now, that's a big problem. That's great if you, like, I don't know, 15 years ago, 2 gigahertz was amazing. Today it's not so much. The reason for that is not only does it impact how the SQL Server behaves, but you're effectively doubling your licensing. So if you look at a 2 gigahertz or 4 gigahertz CPU, 4 gigahertz is more expensive to buy. Yeah, it's like, 4 gig CPU is 7 grand or even 15 grand more than a 2 gigahertz CPU. That's true. You have to buy hosts, so you have to buy a couple of these suckers. It's 100 grand more for CPUs. Well, how do we justify that? Well, if your SQL licensing is $500,000 a year, you have to all of a sudden pay $1 million. Yeah, it's actually a good idea to buy faster CPUs, and everyone will be happy because it's faster, and you don't need 16 CPUs or 30 CPUs in the server. You can do it less. So those are things that I knew about it, I knew about it, but I didn't know about it, like know about it, and now I know about it, so I'll talk about it. Another issue we had on hardware, and I didn't know, was hyper-converged infrastructure. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. Most SQL DBAs aren't, but it's all right. It's where everything gets stacked on the same machine. Otherwise, they have a SAN, separate hardware. I didn't know too much. Oh, I knew about it, but I didn't know about it. Turns out that they had one SAN. And if you have one SAN, it's one point of failure. So you can have as many availability groups as you want on one SAN. If the one SAN dies, it's game over, right? So then you're hoping the SAN in the other country works, but they also have a single SAN. So those are considerations which were outside of my control. I didn't make buying decisions for the project hardware, but I should have. I should have been influencing them early on and saying, listen, guys, you want hyper-converged for a reason, or you want a secondary SAN for your SQL workloads, something to that extent. But we came in a bit late in the discussion. I wish I could have changed it, or I wish I could have been at that point very early on and said, guys, before we do anything, let's talk about hardware. And I didn't know. I honestly didn't know. I mean, I'm a DBA. I like query plans. They're amazing. Like, I don't know what's the difference between spinning disks and SAS drives and SSDs and NVMe. And I know now, but I didn't know then. And that impacted the performance of the applications on the SQL servers, which we could have mitigated early on. So that's difficult, right? We were behind schedule, way behind, like 3 or 4 weeks behind. That's a long time when your whole business has a certain cutover date planned. So it was challenging in various ways, right? The people started dragging in. Teams are too small, right? There were many things that we just didn't even think about because everyone's nice, right? Everyone's nice. Oh, yay, we're on target, everything's great. No one will confront you and say, this is wrong. Project managers are great people, but they're responsible for managing a project. It's not, they just managing deadlines with their sponsors. They're just saying, yeah, we're ahead or we're behind. It's not just a case where they're going to tell you how to fix it. They're just reporting on the state. So when they're nice to you, it does not necessarily mean that the project's okay. And they might not tell you that, oh, my boss is really unhappy with you. If you're lucky, you'll get a project manager who will say that, but that causes conflict. No one wants conflict, so we'll just, we'll be happy and carry on. It's easier for projects to fail than for people to confront problems. So it's easier for them to say, oh, not a problem, it's failed. It's really hard to say, I made a mistake, or someone else made a mistake and I didn't tell them that they made a mistake. That's one of the important lessons we learned from this. It's about communicating that across. So people were a big challenge because people were very nice. People can be a problem if they're nasty. It's also true. You have to work around folks like that. But people being super nice can be just as damaging for project as people being difficult to work with, because they're not going to tell you they're unhappy. They're not going to tell you it's not going to work. That's why we got into this position that I was sitting there with head of IT and I'm like, no, I look into it. Yeah, it could have been resolved way early on. I didn't think about that, right? And with SQL, I've worked on other projects. I've worked with document management products. I've worked with other things. SQL is its own little beast. It's got a complexity that's very different from other projects. There's nuances to this, compatibility level issues, right? Your vendor's real happy with SQL 2012, but they're running compat level 90, right? So there's a reason why they're there, right? Got a little pop-up going. There's a reason that they on that compatibility level, because their stuff brags on compat 100. Oh, okay, whoops, because they were running legacy code from 2000, right? So it's challenging, and they don't say that to you in the conversation. They just say, we really need SQL 2012. We'll only do SQL 2012. And you're like, you guys are so backwards. We're in 2017 already. You can't believe what this stuff does. Enterprise edition, oh, you're going to be so happy. And you just can't get why they can't communicate that with you. And also, they can't communicate it because they don't know. They don't know that the reason that they can only go to 12 is because of compatibility issues. They don't know that. So the app's running some legacy code somewhere, background, you don't know about it. That adds a completely different level of complexity. You're not just, if you're doing a hardware upgrade. I'm doing remote desktop upgrade. I'm just putting in new hardware. I'm putting in the remote desktop services. Happy days. Yes, there's complexity. If there's remote desktop consultants listening to this, I'm so super sorry. I'm just using it as an example. Your complexity lies within a single application stack. With SQL, our complexity lies in many application stacks having to speak with the same service, and that service has to be highly available across many different platforms. So there is a big difference of complexity, which you won't find normally. We also had a long downtime. So we had 6 hours planned for downtime. The client actually only wanted 30 minutes. Right. So also, if we're planning for this and you think, oh, I have nice little chunky downtime, blackout window, it's going to be awesome. And the client says, no, it changes how you plan. So everything that could possibly go wrong in this project went wrong for us. Like it was bad. And it's bad because it reflects on us as a consulting company, and it reflects on me as a principal. So it's not, you have to take it on the chin. It's not fun, but you have to deal with it. Oh, next slide. Come on, slide. Okay. Now this is a very hard lesson. I'm going to minimize this away. I have a different version of this quote, which I was told, and I said, you'll always rise to your highest level of preparation. And I didn't understand that until I kind of started reading about this this quote from Archilochus, I think it's his name. Sorry, I'm not Greek. And it turns out that 2,500 years ago, people were already mucking up projects, right? Imagine that's maybe a human thing. It's not about what you expect you're going to do. And that's, I expected I'm going to do this amazing thing. It's going to be awesome. It's a great project. I expected that because that's what everyone was saying. Oh, you're so lovely, you're so great, and so clever, and you're doing this wonderful thing. But I didn't train. I wasn't prepared for this project. And when things went wrong, I fell to my highest level of preparation, which was not at all. So when I looked at this, I'm like, yeah, that's me. I know exactly how this goes. Oh yeah, it's 680 BC. Yeah, so people have been failing on projects for quite a long time. I can only imagine that there's you know, building a road 3,500 years ago, 2,500 years ago, like, you know, this guy is slow on digging out the trench, you know, whip him harder. Or this guy, where's the rocks? You guys said the rocks will be here yesterday. Where's our rocks, guys? Where's the quarry? You know, like there's the army. They need us to build the road. You guys are late, right? This is not something that's inherent in projects. It's inherent in how humans operate, right? It's crazy. Like, how did they build? I can only imagine, like, aqueducts in Roman time and the roads. There are so much complexity around projects, and that's probably why they went to war. You know, like, you know, the project managers fighting one another, and it escalates, and all of a sudden you have like project managers become generals, and like, please, just you guys stand over there, you guys stand over there. It's human nature. And if you don't prepare for this, if you're not actively preparing every single day, training every single day, practicing every single day, you will rise to the best training you've done. And in a lot of cases, that's quite appalling. For me, it was embarrassing when I sat and like, I actually don't know how to deal with this. I actually don't know, how do I go forward with this? I can't tell the client that was opening all their wallets and spending millions of dollars and saying, oh, well, actually, you're spending it on a consultant who does not know, because I actually haven't trained for something like this. That I do hope that none of them are listening to this particular cast at some stage. But yeah, it's a reality. And I was open about it and saying, oh, clearly we were unprepared for this. And clearly it's something that we could have done better. And we set up this is kind of the week before we know we're meeting the head of IT, and we ran through this list that I showed you, and I went through, this is the stuff that's biting us. This is the stuff that's going really bad. We didn't know how to fix it. So as I'm walking into the boardroom before this, I know I could tell him, listen, I'm looking into it, but it's not going to sell it. No one's going to be happy with it. So I had my little list of 15 odd items. I'm like, well, I'm looking into it, but we also have identified several issues. And we'll be briefing your project managers this afternoon on those issues. Okay, whole conversation twisted around. So Well, number one, I've said, okay, yes, I'm looking into it. It's my responsibility. We've identified the issues, which we believe is a problem, and we're going to talk with the project managers to deal with it outside of the context of the discussion, right? I didn't tell him, I didn't sleep the weekend before looking for what exactly was wrong with the project. I didn't tell him that, we had to work out a separate plan to do performance tuning on this environment, just so we can kind of get through the performance problems we'd have on the course. And that was like 40, 50 grand worth of performance tuning, right? That we had to pay out of our own pockets from the time we spent, right? It's for projects, that's a no-no. We don't give freebies. Freebies are bad. Client has to pay for everything. But we had to remediate the project. So when we looked at this and we started looking, okay, well, how are we going to do our security? How are we going to do all this other stuff? That was on us. We sucked it up. We said, it's our mistake. We'll fix it. But we didn't have to tell the head of ID that, oh, well, we didn't know how to do security certificates. No. We just said, we've identified the issues and we'll be briefing your project managers this afternoon. That was great. Conversation changed, and they're like, okay, so you know what's wrong? Yes, we know exactly what's wrong. You guys are going to fix it? Yes, we know we're going to fix it. Don't worry about this, right? So that's kind of the intro to how I got myself into a really difficult position. It wasn't fun. It wasn't enjoyable at all. Like I wake up screaming some nights still, just thinking about it. It wasn't, because everything I learned up to that point didn't help me at that particular phase. So I had to relearn a bunch of the stuff. I had to think about why did I get myself into this position? How could I have not gotten myself into this position in the first place? That's really challenging, right? So move into questions. If this is kind of the end of part one, which I'm hoping would have been the boring bit. I hope the next bit's more exciting. But are there any questions? What do we have so far?
I'm scared. Just out of breath.
Okay,
there's no questions so far.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Can I just say that I'm in a similar situation that you described, but nothing has hit the fan yet. But it never ever dawned on me that clock speeds would be such a great driver for licensing costs. It was like, how have I never thought of this?
Yeah,
because
it's
my client obviously bought 2 gigahertz processors.
Oh yeah, they love the stuff. It's like,
well, they had not so much bought, they just had them. And yeah. I mean, so okay, that adds $500,000 in licensing, but okay then.
It effectively doubles your licensing. So these are things. This is stuff that I learned, right? And it's really challenging because you don't. The unfortunate bit is the only way that you learn it is if you do it. It's like, you're not going to get the experience if you don't do it. But this is not something which you can go Google online. SQL projects, what to do? Like that stuff doesn't exist. I've looked for it. Like I really have.
You should write a checklist. You've already started.
Well, we have a document. I'll kind of show, and that's where the demo comes in. So for those folks who thought I'm going to do a code demo, yes, it will be, but it's written English. Yes, in a document format. Yes, it's very exciting. I'll walk you through that. It's not necessarily about what exactly the checklist is or what the requirements are. It's about, do you have a framework that you can operate in? And what's amazing is we use the same framework for small SQL projects. So a small project for us is about 30 grand, right? So that's a small upgrade migration project. We use the exact same framework for that small project as we use for the very, very large projects. So we can take the same learnings through and we can have this. It's nice because if you point out things, especially on hardware, I got a client who they went from a SSD. Sorry for folks, this hardware stuff's very boring. Went from a SSD SAN, which is really high, like a 50,000 IOPS SAN, and something broke somehow. They got an NVMe SAN, right? So for those of you who are unfamiliar with NVMe, It's more expensive than SSD, but NVMe does 50,000 IOPS, so IO operations per second. It's a lot of IOPS. Yeah, it's a lot of throughput. NVMe does 250,000 IOPS, right? It's like, it's even on a like a mid-tier nimble SAN, or gets that's 25,000 IOPS. NVMe is 10 times the IOPS, right? It is all of a sudden where you had disk contentions, now you have latch contention. It's like all of a sudden everything changes. The whole profile changes in the application, behavior of the SQL, so everything changes. And to spend that little bit of extra money, oh, it changes for the better. Well, it changes for the better. So where you had problems before, spending a little bit extra. So a 20 terabyte NVMe SAN, okay, list price is about between $50,000 to $75,000. That's a lot of money for a SAN, but the 64 cores worth of enterprise compute you're running on that server, if you can reduce that to 16 cores, you're saving way more than the price of the SAN every year. Right? And that's a lot of the discussions I have with clients start off by that. Like, okay, you have 190 cores worth of compute. What are you going to do with all of that? Would you like to pay less? You know, we don't call it, we don't say we're going to do Microsoft in, because we want to take those services to Azure, for example. And it's saying, well, you're paying $1 million, or the biggest client we have here is about $3.5 million a year SQL licensing. And we're like, well, you're only utilizing 5% of your compute across your SQL servers. Perhaps you can look at faster CPUs. Perhaps you can look at consolidating down some of that workloads. You can still spend the money, and you can still spend the money with Microsoft. But yeah, we can build you a nice managed instance, like a really, really nice managed instance, just for your fun workloads for way cheaper than you're paying at the moment. But DBAs we're not taught this. We're not taught to think about licensing, and licensing is complicated. We're not taught to think about hardware, because it is SQL Server is such a complex thing. Once you get into it, it's really hard to kind of look outside of it. And when you get to look outside of it, you're like, oh, yeah, okay, now I know what contentions are. Okay, now I can actually see what the IO profile looks like and why faster CPUs would have fixed that problem. Or even the CPU balance. Do they have, when they put down the CPUs on the virtual machines, are they doing many sockets, or are they doing a single socket? Are they matching their hardware configuration? All of those things from a consultant becomes consulting engagements. Lovely, you're going to make some extra money on that. But it helps the client to have a better overall outcome. So if I'm working with a client who's spending, dropping $5 million on a project, maybe $500,000 becomes services for me, that I want to give them the best value, that at the end of that, they must say, this was the best money we ever spent. Our systems are not slow anymore. We payrolls on time. You know, all the big pain points is gone, because actually SQL was the problem. Yeah, it was the database, right? Okay, so any other questions? Maybe not. Fine, you guys are welcome to ask. Sorry, I like speaking about this stuff. Like, I love SQL Server. It's amazing. I don't know. Are we up for a quick break, coffee break, or should I just carry on with the rest of the thing?
Up to you.
There is actually a Q&A question.
I think it's a comment, but yeah, we still can read it.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah. So about compatibility levels, Microsoft allows you to tweak the compatibility at the database level and/or query level. So vendors need to understand how to work on newer instances. Sorry, just a comment.
That is spot on. So yes, Microsoft does allow for that. It's totally true. It's absolutely true. The challenge part is trying to convince a vendor about that. So what we need to understand, especially with projects, it's not about the technical capability. It's about how they feel. Sorry. It's like, it's how they feel. It has nothing to do what you can technically do. It's about how they feel. Because for most vendors, and I deal with a lot of multinational vendors as well, so we will performance tune their database for their clients at their client sites, and we manage it. So it's a real intimate involvement with how these things work. And in most cases, so I'm talking 9 out of 10 vendors, so software vendors that I've dealt with, don't have DBA skills, right? They have someone who can write SQL code. Doesn't mean that they're DBA. So it might have been an accidental DBA, lots of those, but their main speciality is not the engine. It's perhaps more BI or a code kind of DBA, which is still a DBA. You're still a DBA if you write SQL code, but they don't understand how compatibility levels work. So it's really challenging to convince a vendor that your compatibility mode is actually totally fine. You don't have to worry about it at all. Dude, you'll be fine. They don't believe that, because when they go ask their DBA, so their technical expert, their SME, subject matter expert in their business, that person will say, it can only run in 2012. It can only run in 2012. That's 2012. That's it. That's it. And we'll stick our guns 2012. That's it.
I'm pretty sure they're very acutely aware that you can tell them it's fine and they can move to 2017. And if anything breaks, they can't go pointing the finger at you saying, you know, he said the database would be okay. It's their software that is broken, right?
Because it's not just about the app. They have a support agreement. They have like a dozen or 100 developers that they're watering and feeding, right? They have to keep everyone happy. So when you're going there shouting, compatibility levels are going to be amazing, and you're going to have so much fun, it's not that they don't believe you, but you're just one voice. They have many voices they have to worry about. They have code compliance they have to worry about. You don't have to. Well, there's an interesting client I worked with. They financial services guys, and whenever you think life is complex, go work with financial services. It's like there's restrictions around what they can work on, and it's the people who write the laws and the compliance haven't worked on SQL 2016. They've worked in 2008, right? You're not gonna convince that person to go redo all their life work just to raise the compliance. Who cares about that? So there are other things that come into play, the projects that you don't think about when you're just doing stuff in-house or just delivering a small project. These things can become very complex. What we actually ended up doing in this particular scenario is the biggest issue, kind of spoiler alert, but the biggest issue we had was the compatibility was our problem. So we were pitching SQL 2017. Compat was only supported up to 90, and we said, okay, well, if we go past 2012, your code will break. So we said, we'll do the following. We will go to 2014 instances. So we had 2016, 2017, 2014 instances all stacked together nicely, playing nicely with, because that's what instances do. They love playing together. And we then we took the old server, so the stuff was running on 90 that would break in 2014, and we said we will take this particular server, we'll ring fence it, this instance, and we will make the code changes on behalf of the vendor, and we will sign risk, so we will sign guarantee that if it breaks, we're responsible for fixing that in that particular scenario. And it was done in such a way that the client was happy, because the alternative was totally being out of support, and the vendor was happy because we said we will put it in a state that you're comfortable with, and we take all the risk. So anything that goes wrong, it's financially our problem. We'll fix it in that particular context. Not the business risk, that will be crazy because something can break and cost millions of dollars. But we said the risk in terms of supporting that particular thing, we'll pay for it. We'll look after that. And so that's how we got around the compatibility. So we went, well, you can go to 90, but you can be on, or you can go 90 in 2014. I think is it something like that. Been a while, so this is a couple of years ago, so we learned a lot since then, and we got to a point where they were happy with the level of the version of SQL Server, and we were happy with running that in the environment, because I'm not going to do availability groups in 2012 ever again. It's like the bane of my existence. That was really bad. We also had another side, I'm so sorry. We had another project where we actually had to do failover clusters for 2008 as a proper migration. That we migrated from 2008 to 2008. It's like that was the migration project. 2008 servers to 2008 servers. That was recent because that's the only thing the app supports. Oh, and by the way, the vendor doesn't exist anymore, so they can't upgrade the app. And it's just a core system, so they can't get away from it. Right? I have clients who run SQL 2000. Right? Wow. SQL 2000. Yeah, and it's great. Ola Hellengren scripts are on there. That stuff's just going magically. But I have clients who are bound by SQL 2000. That's the limitation. And the cost to change that out, it's too expensive for them to change the system. So it's down there. Is it working? Yeah, it's working. Can we back it up? Yep, okay, it's fine. Okay, happy days. You have some data loss potentially up to half an hour. Like, cool, fine. Take snapshots every 50 minutes. Okay, fine. So it's really there's other things around this which you don't hear, you don't find in normal discussions. So okay, let's carry on. How are we looking on time? So we're on.
I think you have 40 odd minutes before the next session starts.
Okay. Yeah. Now it's fun time. Yeah. Okay. This is my mentality. When I left the meeting with the head of IT, I'm like, okay, right, let's just have fun. We got ourselves into this position because we weren't having fun. We were delivering a project. We're projecting this. I'm making this project. It's a very projecty thing to do. We weren't having fun. We weren't enjoying ourselves. And that made us lose the focus from building really good SQL solutions to building what they thought we would be building. So we said, okay, let's rethink of how we're going to approach this. Let's rethink of what do we want to get out of this project, right? What do we want to do? How are we going to enjoy this? It hasn't been fun for the last couple of weeks. Let's have fun. Let's change it. Right? So that was kind of the change in looking at a problem. So I said, okay, let's relook. Let's start from scratch everything again. Okay, erase. Let's start from scratch. Okay, let's go through the learnings we've had, and we're going to ask all those questions real simply and work through it as if we can look at this from a brand new perspective. It's going to be amazing, right? So when we started doing this, okay, what was the requirements? What did we learn? Okay, let's redo our requirements and make sure that we add those requirements in our testing framework. So when we deliver the project at the end, the customer's going to say, what did you do? And then we're going to say, well, we did all these tests. So we added our tests in our requirements. And we said, okay, well, we're going to test for the availability of SQL Server. Oh, why don't we add it as a requirement? And then when we test it, we can say we have fulfilled that requirement. Tick, tick. Like, client's happy. The project managers love this. They're like, oh, yes, you're just hitting all the requirements. It's amazing. We didn't think about that, right? So we went through the stuff that we're delivering on. Is it highly available? Oh, high availability. That's a requirement. You can actually go tie that into the requirements. So we added the requirements list over time. And as we found each one of these things that's becoming a problem, we added it as a requirement so we can deliver it on test and sign it off. It was magical, right? Then we said, okay, well, we got this new list of requirements, which is amazing because now we all know what we're supposed to do. Why don't we give it to the client? Give it to the client, right? The client signed it off and we included it in our design. Okay. Wow. We should have done this from the start. It would have been so easy. We didn't, right? So that was really simple. When we stepped back, we said, okay, let's just have fun. Let's just have fun with this. Enjoy it. It's just SQL, right? Let's just go with it. And at the end of it, like, okay, what if it goes wrong? So do we miss any requirements? What if we miss something? How do we deal with it? So that's we went through this loop just for every one of the things that we saw was a problem, and we added it to the requirement. It's pretty simple. And same for the risk. I mean, like, okay, well, what does the risk look like? Okay, well, what can break? Oh, okay, we laid in the project. Okay, let's talk about it. Let's talk about the worst case outcome. We fail. We failed now. It can't get worse than we had now. So how can you just, what's next? So we started talking to the project managers, like, okay, what's our plan Bs? What's our plan Cs? What's the risk of the project? What's the risk of the business if the project fails? What's the risk if we late? Kind of understanding those risks. And where we found risks, we added it to requirements. It's real simple, right? When you think about it, it's like, oh yeah, I could have thought about this. Yeah, I didn't. I got sucked. It was really bad. Yeah, when we worked on the vendors, what are we doing with the vendors? Do we speak to the vendors? No, we didn't. Okay, give us a list of vendors. It's a list of vendors. Speak. Hello, vendor. How's it going? Yeah, I really want to do a SQL upgrade. Can you help me out with this? Right. That's where we found the compatibility levels. Right? And again, we just went through the vendors where something was specific, like a compatibility level, it became a requirement. It's magical. So we added to a requirements list. It's awesome, right? And then we'd ask ourselves, okay, what happens if it goes wrong? What happens if we implement something that goes wrong? Okay, well, we have to just accept the risk. We're happy to accept the risk. I mean, this was like raise raws, the change in raise raws or something, I'll change the code. Don't worry, it's on us. We'll change the code. There's some other legacy stuff. And we said, we'll fix the code, and that fixed the vendor problem for us. Okay, added it to a requirement. It's amazing. right? And then we keep on asking, we ask the vendors, what happens if it goes wrong? What happens if we can't support it? That's where we got all these other stories from them from. It's like, it's about, you know, their engagements and their relationships. And this, by the way, there's this huge commercial agreement that they have with this supplier. And if they lose it with this supplier, it's going to impact 3 other of their clients. So there's many, many millions of dollars at stake for them. So they're not going to risk it on one DBA saying, you can raise your compatibility levels. Okay, well, that's a problem. We'll just install 2012. We'll just install 2014. Easy, we'll fix it, right? Stakeholders, we didn't speak with them. Stakeholders is everyone. Like, if you're unfamiliar with stakeholders, it's everyone. Everyone who can shout at you, point finger at you, that's a stakeholder, right? Because they're going to do that, going, oh, you late on that. So we decided we're going to engage more. We were engaging with the project managers frequently. Let's change this and speak with everyone. So give everyone updates, just talk to everyone all the time, you know. And you know, we ask them, what if it goes wrong? What if this goes wrong? What if it doesn't work? What's your expectations? What do you want to know? These are things we should have done at the start, which we now do at the start, but those are things we should have done. And we didn't do that, right? So it's learning. It's just going through them, progressing over and over. Same with the migration tools. Yeah, fuzzy pants DBA tool. Yeah, don't do that. Don't just roll out a new tool because you think it's real fancy and it's amazing. Just keep it simple. You know, if our rule today is if we can't do it with DBA tools, right? If you don't use DBA tools, you have to. It's amazing. Like, I use it. I'm a professional consultant. I do multi-million dollar SQL projects. I use DBA tools because it's that good. I pay for it, but they give it away for free. So I'll just take it, right? Use it. It's free. It's amazing, right? If you feel uncomfortable with that, you can use Data Migration Assistant. Yeah, it's also free. Oh, my type of price. I use it for large scale migrations, right? Or log shipping. It's also free. Okay, you have to pay a bit of a price with your soul to do the log shipping, but it's okay. It's technically free. Just use it. If that is not a solution for you, then you're doing it wrong. That is said, there is instances where you want real-time replication between different systems. You might actually have to break that out for a separate system. They are ridiculously expensive. So when you get to that point, you would know that you have to use them, right? So if you have financial transactions going on and you have no downtime, you actually you have to use a different system to migrate the data if it's different platforms. But that's, if you're in that league, you'll know how to use it. If you're not there, DBA tools is amazing. It does everything for you. Like, you know, switches the source stuff on read-only mode. So even you won't get any match transactions. It's just amazing, right? So you keep it simple and ask yourself, what if it goes wrong? What if my migration goes wrong? Do I have a backup plan? Okay, if DBA tools doesn't work. Okay, yeah, well, here's a nice in case of DBA tools not working as expected. It's a 7 terabyte database. I'm not going to back it up and restore it in 15 minutes. Okay, okay, well, let's do log shipping next weekend. It'll be great. It gives us some time to get that stuff up. Right. Just thinking about that. Scale on your hardware. We discussed it earlier, right? Things you need to think about, you know, get a hardware expert in the room with you saying, listen, you're very clever with this stuff. Come into the room and show my folks how to use this. But tell them why NV is better. Come, expert. That's why I got you. If you're in an organization, there is an expert somewhere, or you get a vendor. HP, they're amazing. You just say, I want a clever HP person to come talk to me about NVMe. You drag them into a room. You can talk to the client about it. It's easy, right? And you can ask them, so what if it goes wrong? What if we can't scale as expected? What if we can't, you know, get the same throughput we're expecting? Can we get this throughput? And then the client will be like, what throughput? And like, a requirement. Oh, what is your IOPS expectation? 1,000. Okay, awesome. Let's put it down the requirements. And what can your SAN do? Oh, 50,000. Yeah, we're well ahead of requirements. Awesome, right? Everything just becomes requirement, you know. And that means at the end of it, when you sign off those requirements for your testing, you look like you've done 99%, 100% of the work. It looks amazing because the stuff bloats automatically, right? Same, project timelines. I learned this really the hard way. You might have heard different versions of this, but get a project manager, sit down with you, and you work really hard on what you think the time will take and all the effort required in this project. Then you add 35%. Yeah. And then you add another 15%. Yeah, but we do just like diminishing returns. Then you just add another 5% just on top. I've not yet met any client who's complained about me delivering a project just in time or a little bit early. Not one. Not a single one. I've met many clients who are exceptionally unhappy if I haven't delivered a project the day after it was supposed to be delivered. It's very unhappy. You can always bring it forward and say, well, we found this amazing way that we can actually save on migration costs. So you shave off 2 weeks from your project. No one's going to complain. I promise you, like no one. Say, we're like, yeah, awesome. Okay. Rather over budget and come in cheaper, right? It's amazing. Don't come in too cheap or do it like in a week. Then they know you're just cheating them. Unless you fix price it. That's what I do. So I'll fix price a contract. No. Anyway, that's contract stuff later. And again, you ask yourself, what if it goes wrong? What if it breaks? What if it doesn't work as expected? Because like Murphy's Law, whatever can go wrong will go wrong at some stage. It's reality. So what can go wrong in your timeline? If you've built in enough fat, then you know that if it goes wrong, I can accommodate that. If you're at the end of the project and you still have like 3 weeks worth of time left, give back to the client. Say, listen, I'm going to do some performance tuning. I'm going to do some other stuff. I'm going to add more value. I'm going to make your stuff better. I'm going to do this stuff. Communicate it with them. They feel they get extra value. You don't have to necessarily give the money back because they also have budget to burn through. So they're going to say, I don't really want the money back. Just use it on something else. In a lot of cases, customers are okay with that. If you say, well, I'm going to use it, they're happy. Your resources, project resources, right? Do you have the right skill to deliver this? So that's do you have a project coordinator who can do this? A good one, not just Sally, who also makes coffee and sends out the birthday messages, she's great, by the way, but she's not necessarily a project coordinator. Do you have someone like that? Do you perhaps need a project manager? If you're going to this larger, you might need an internal project manager to manage your own team. What if your resources are not available? What if there's P1s and they have to go deal with client problems and they can't work on the project? Or there's another project, that really nice project you really wanted, and it's going to be a lot of fun. You're going to build distributed availability groups and it's going to be amazing. And that comes through the same time as delivering this project. It's like, what do you do with resourcing? Right? You have to think about things when you deliver this project, and that can be internally. It doesn't have to be an external project. It can be, you just doing an upgrade. You want to do this really cool upgrade project internally. The boss has signed off, management's real happy, but then, there's that AI thing, and I really want to do that. And how are you going to make sure that they all have the same timelines? You have to think about that. Everything's becoming projects. So then, even if your internal resources, what does your timing look like? Can you extend that out? Can you get backup? Can you go explain it to someone else? Think about your team size. It's really important. Large teams, lots of problem. People are great, but people add complexity, right? So have you delivered such a large team? Do you need to go from a project coordinator to a project manager, for your internal team? Perhaps you're working with 15 people internally. It's the largest project, right? That's just the SQL components. That's large. I find that small teams work really well. So I want like maybe 3 people on a project, no more. And then our coordinator, that's it. And if we can't do it in that three-person team, then we haven't designed the project properly. So it's easy to throw in more people. You can hire contractors and say, come on, have a little SQL party. It's amazing. But it's a measure of how well you've planned it. If your project can't get implemented by a small, good team, then you might be doing it wrong. I'm not saying criticizing, but you might be adding complexity that you need someone else to come help with instead of just simplifying down your project. This is only SQL Server, folks. It's not like rocket science. Like, that's really easy. It's just SQL servers. This is well supported. You have an amazing support community. All the information you want is available. The great vendor, Microsoft, they give you all the resources you want. It's easy, right? There's other things that are far more complicated than this. So if you can't do it in a small team, then relook at why you're doing it or how you're doing it. From a client perspective, make sure that you are best friends, best mates with the project managers, right? That's the key to your success in the project. Because if they're your friends, they'll tell you when you're mucking up. They'll tell you, sorry, you're kind of embarrassing me. I actually want you to kind of fix this. If they're not your friends, they're just kind of like, oh yeah, it's lovely, it's amazing. Yeah, let's do a Kanban stand-ups. Yeah, it's amazing, right? It's just, you need project managers on your side, as in on your side, to help you deliver the project. And there's nothing wrong with your first meeting with the project manager to tell them, listen, I want you on my side because I'm delivering this for you. I want you to succeed. I want me to succeed. I want the client to succeed. Tell me when I'm missing it. Tell me when I'm wrong. Tell me when I'm making a mistake. They'll gladly tell you, but in a lot of cases, they've told other people and ended up bad. And so they're kind of maybe a grumpy project manager. So be open and honest with them and say, for the success of the project, tell me what I need to know, when I need to know it, and I'll make sure it happens, right? And treat them kindly. project managers can be challenging. They have lots of moving bits around them. You looking at your SQL Server, they've got like all of this other stuff, budgetary constraints, and the head of IT is shouting at them because the project's late, and they have to smile and say, "Yay, Kanban, yeah, let's move a little to-do list." It's amazing. There's other things. It's complicated, right? So be kind to them and ask them, what if it goes wrong? What if it doesn't work? Or what do we do then? How are you going to deal with it? Ask those questions, right? They'll gladly tell you, they'll advise you what's the plan B look like, right? Your upgrade path, what does it look like? Okay, that's fun. That was fun. You can tell everyone, oh, 2019 runs Compat 100. You're fine. You can put in manage instances. You'll be fine. Yeah, but what if it's 90? What if it's Compat level 90? And then all of this stuff just falls to pieces. It's horrible, right? What we do for most of our projects today is, irrespective of what the app is, we'll test it on SQL 2014. And if it works on 14, it's fine, right? The code changes, the breaking stuff from 12 to 14, if you can get over that, everything else is okay, right? So we'll test. We'll say, oh, we'll first test it. It's part of our project. Clients pay for that. We will spin up in 2014 and we'll test your application on there. And if that's happy, then we just go through all this other stuff. We use Data Migration Assistant to test compatibility. We use the QA one, that other one, the other one, to check for the queries, if there's anything breaking in the queries. Data Experimentation Assistant, that's the one. Then we look at, okay, what if it goes wrong? What if our upgrade doesn't work as expected? Right? What if our cutover time doesn't work as expected? We're planning 4 hours, and if it doesn't quite work, okay, well, that could go down really badly, right? So how do you plan that out, right? Ideally for us, a cutover is in the middle of the week. Wednesdays are great, right? Clients don't like it. Like, why do you want to cut over in the middle of the week? Oh, because people don't go on holiday. It's not weekend, right? Whether it's COVID or not COVID, people are fishing over weekends, right? When someone's fishing, they don't want to deal with problems, right? Simple. Like, I'm fishing, or I'm hiking, or I'm out with my kids, I'm with my family. I don't deal with production problems when I'm having family time. And we respect that. I really respect people's personal time. So do a cutover in the middle of the night on a Wednesday, then if something breaks, you can fix it on Thursday and Friday. Our perfect cutovers are in the middle of a production day during lunchtime. Yeah, that's my perfect time, like a Wednesday lunchtime when folks are out having coffee. I'm going to do a quick cut over, and then when they get back at their desk, they're either going to be real happy or going to be real unhappy. There's not a, oh, it was kind of iffy. It's either yes or no. So immediately, and rather have everyone unhappy, and you can say, oh, we have a problem with the SQL Server. We're just going to roll back quickly. Okay, it's fine. As opposed to them going over the weekend, and by Monday they say something's wrong, and you have to roll back all your transactions back to Thursday or Friday, right? So again, like, that's practice. Like, what if it goes wrong? What if a cutover doesn't work as expected, right? Now, I have a demo, yes, because what would a discussion like this be around consulting if I don't show you at least a document, right? So I'm going to show you what a high-level document looks like in terms of taking all these learnings that we had in these projects and how we apply them today. So this is a combination of many years of pain, right? So I'm actually going to walk you guys through documentation. Some of you might not have seen documentation, so this might be your first step into documentation. But this is what I get paid for, is writing documents. It's kind of sad, but yeah, it's that's part of what we do, right? We have to document what we do so that everyone can agree on what's happening, right? If you can't agree on what's happening, how are you going to do this? So I know for the folks who are not interested, you have to deal with this at some stage. So rather, just take it. It's like, look at it now, work through it, because there's going to be stuff in there that I spoke about, and I'll kind of walk through. This will just be quick, like 10, 15 minutes, maybe not even as long. A table of contents. This will show all the things that we thought about, like the introduction, the requirements, right? The, what is it that we're actually doing in this project? What does a solution architecture look like for the customer? What do they expect to see? What is the technical components in this, right? Operational considerations. There's so many things around this, which you only think about this as you progress through projects. You know, if it's your first or second project, you're not going to find this. This doesn't exist, right? So, sorry, maybe you hit me up on LinkedIn if you want any of this. But the stuff doesn't exist because this is what people suffer for. This is what we bleed for. This is the things that we get shouted for, and you have to kind of build this on your own. Now, I have a bunch of requirements. When I started my projects, I had like 5. Like, there, yeah, it's my requirements. As we went through these projects, all of a sudden, you know, we specified that it has to be enterprise edition. I don't know, can you guys see my screen fine? Yeah, okay. It has to be enterprise edition. Sounds simple, doesn't it? But it is a requirement. Yes, it has to be enterprise edition. Because afterwards, if you install standard edition, then they can say, but there wasn't a requirement. So we all know what edition we're installing. And then we get the bill for enterprise edition. They're like, oh, well, it's in the requirements. Oh, okay, that's fine, then we'll pay it. We had a client, like, they wanted standard edition. Like, we want standard edition because that's what we budgeted for. And like, oh, guys, it's the wrong thing. This is the wrong version for the tool you want to use. You can't use like standard edition. This is for BizTalks. Like, you can't use standard edition for BizTalk. Yeah, it's enterprise. It's like, it is your business runs on BizTalk. Like, no, we only have budget for standard edition. Like, I think you guys are doing this wrong, right? So you define this. You say this is a requirement. You know, is there performance optimizations? And the nice thing about SQL Server is a lot of these requirements that you build up that you get clients to agree on. Our clients have to sign off all these requirements, right? Because if they don't, I'm not going to deliver the solution. It must say, okay, it must have a development, a production environment. It could have a test environment. So if I end up not delivering a test environment, it's okay. It was just a could. It wasn't necessarily required, right? Do I have, you know, it must handle node failures automatically. That's a requirement, but it's built into SQL Server. Easy, like tick, like, yay, thank you, SQL Server, right? We define all these things. We define what the IAP expectation is like. You know, are we going to do basic availability groups? Okay, this is enterprise edition, so it's standard edition. As you go through these, I think, sorry, for those of you who run Windows 11, you'd know the pain related to Office crashing from time to time. Apologies for that. It'll be quick to bring it back up. So as you step through this, you know, every single thing we've had clients ask us about, you know, security. You know, is encryption? Oh, it's a requirement. Yay. Well, you're on TDE, it's a requirement, right? It is a requirement. Number one, it allows you to know where you're at with a project. Can we define a port for SQL communication? Yes, we can. That's a requirement. Yes. Okay. It's part of the platform. That's why you buy it. What would you like that port to be? Oh, 1433. Oh, that's a requirement because you're specifying a port, even if it's a default. Yeah, it's a requirement. Yeah. See what I'm doing there? See, every single thing you put on as a requirement, because this is what you get tested on. It's not whether your SQL Server works. It is whether you hit all the requirements the company's paying you for. It must have SQL encryption disabled. Okay, it's communication. Yeah, you don't want communication encryption because the app can't handle it, right? We want to go manage certificates. But then if they come back afterwards, you can say, but you guys agreed that it should be disabled. You didn't say it must be enabled. Oh, you want it enabled? Well, I got a statement of work for you. It's going to be another 3 weeks worth of work. You know, the client pays for what they agree on, and you charge them for what they ask you for. And if they want more, then you pay more. Right? It's fine. It's okay. But you need a mechanism with which you as a DBA can communicate this with a client. Because let's face it, DBAs, we don't really communicate well normally with real people because it's hard. We think of a technical term. Like my brain's thinking of latches and, you know, weight statistics and indexes and execution plans, right? IT folk don't really want to know about that. You know, a head of IT doesn't want to know about latch problems. They want to know about how can I fix it? Can I give you more money and you can make the problem go away, or do I have to get someone else to fix it? That's all they worry about. They don't worry about whether it's what the actual technical thing is. And because we get so into the engine and the behavior, we really focus real hard on technical. You know, we must have as-built documentation. Oh, that's a great one. You just take your design and you update it with the real names. And there's as-built documentation. Again, that's easy to do, but why don't we make it a requirement? Then we look like we know what we're doing, right? The system must use AD authentication. Oh, guess what? It's part of the platform, but it's a requirement. We've thought about it. Every single one of these things in here is something that a client has had a question on, and we raised it and we added it for requirement in the next document and the next design and the next one, because every time we go through this, we want to be better. This is our training. This is what we think about. You know, if when you talk about backups, okay, that's fine. How frequently do you want the backups to happen? Every 10 minutes? That's a requirement. Okay, do you want different time for log and different time? These are all requirements that you specify. This is not requirements as to, well, I would really like it to look like this. This is your deliverables. This is what you're going to make in the project, in your solution, that's going to make it look like you know what you're doing. Right? If you have this, in most cases, like some of the clients we deal with, they just go like, oh, see this? Yeah, guys, I wouldn't recommend using Windows 11. Sorry, I'm a bit bleeding edge. That's not going to work. I think it doesn't like me talking so much. So okay, I'll try again. Sorry about this. See, I had to do a demo. This was going so well. I was like, why did I have to do a demo?
It's the demo curse. You just can't get away from it. You don't need to code to crash in demos.
No, you see, you just need Windows 11, which is amazing. I do find it works a lot better for me. So let's see if we can get through this stuff relatively simply. There you go. Okay.
Also, I would love to steal that documentation from you.
Oh, you'll have to ask real nice. Wait till you see the good stuff. Okay, so I'll gladly share this on, because this is stuff it's invaluable. Especially if you've done something like this, you kind of have to talk about what are you doing, right? You can explain what you're doing. What's your approach? How do you manage the approach? What does your timelines look like? All of these things. It looks silly, but this is every project we've gone through. We've just added stuff in. What do clients want to see? When do we schedule out our stuff? When do we do these things? Who's responsible for the stuff, right? This is different. This is just project management. This is just a framework of project management, but it's how we do it as SQL DBAs or SQL specialists. We do it very different. I promise you, very different from everyone else. Right? I was a SharePoint consultant back in the olden days for a while, and like we do it very differently. And we just think about it very different. You give them a design document. You say, well, this is the picture I'm making for you. And this is where the one server sits, and this is where the other server sits. And do you guys understand this? And are you happy with this? Yes, we're happy with this. Can you sign it off? Can you put your signature, and you're happy with it, and then we're happy with it, and it's amazing, right? Draw pictures for them. You know, I have the visuals as well if you want the visuals, but draw pictures for them. It explains what are you doing, because at the people who are responsible, and if this has to go to a board of directors at some stage, you know, the board's not going to say, oh, I'm going to read this real technical document and I'm going to fall asleep so nicely at night. They don't care about this stuff. They might look at a picture and like, yeah, okay, how much is it going to cost us? Is it going to fix our problem? That's all all of this boils down to. And your responsibility is to give the decision maker the right information, that an IT manager can look at this and go like, hey, I can explain this to my boss, head of IT. Yeah, I can explain this to the board. Yeah, they're going to have some servers on-prem and some servers in Azure, and it's just going to work. Yeah, okay, awesome. How much is it going to cost us? Maybe 100 grand. Okay, awesome. Can you sign it? Get a purchase order. Just make it happen. That's what all of your technical stuff in your head boils down to. Someone's going to ask someone for money, and they're going to say, is it worth it? And they're going, yeah, I think so. Right, so your job is to simplify this to the project team, to everyone involved, that everyone at every stage of the project just, my apologies for this. Let me see if I can export it as a PDF. Perhaps that'll sort out all my problems. No, that's not going to work.
Well, we have a few seconds. You have 13 minutes until the next session starts.
Yeah, good timing. I think I got my timing right on this one. I'm sure most folks are asleep. So maybe sing a little jingle just to get everyone excited. Okay, I think it's doing something. Yeah, unsafe. Sorry about this. It was working so well on my machine yesterday. Okay, try again. Perhaps. See, I have to project manage my poor old Word documents now. I'll give it a go. Let's quick scroll through. And so you go on, so you go on. So this is stuff that I help folks with from a professional service perspective as well. How do you define your instances that are involved, the clusters you're going to build, the availability groups you're going to build? All of these become small requirements that you build into the project so that folks can sign it off. You know, what's your assumptions? Where's your source SQL service coming from? Are you using CNAME redirects? I love them. They're amazing. By the way, it's awesome. Just take the old name, rename it, point it somewhere else. But put it as a requirement, put it as a design decision. So someone can review this and say, yes, the name is right. Because afterwards, if they say Charisma SQL was actually the wrong name, then you guys didn't tell me about it. You saw the document, you were happy with it. Oh, do we do, right? So you have to communicate all this stuff. And people are bad with words. So you write it down and you have them sign a document. And you have them sign, like physically print it out and sign it like you do, like when you do like a cell phone or something, sign it. Because if they haven't signed it, they're going to go like, oh no, I never saw this thing. This is new to me, right? You don't want to have that discussion. So how do you mitigate? What if it goes wrong? So you write it down somewhere. Okay, now we have SQL 2017 Enterprise Edition. This is the servers we're going to build. This is how we're going to define the configuration. This is the disks we need. This is the speed. This is everything you need in order to build this environment lives there. This is where I'm going to do my backups. This is where I'm going to do my file share witness. Everything should live in a document that you can understand. And this is not for fun. This is so that you, when you go into that difficult meeting, that you can say, okay, well, you actually wanted tabular analysis services, and the design document, yeah, sorry if you want the multi-dimensional one. Well, we can change it, but there's a fee associated with it. I have to restart the service, change the config file, right? So, but you have to specify collation. Collation is always a difficult one. So here's a pro tip for all of you folks that run anything that's lives on SQL Server. Make sure it's 2014 and above, and make sure that you run partial containment on your databases so that you can fix all your collation problems. You don't have to install many instances, because the reporting guys are going to come in, they're going to say, oh, reports don't work, and then you have to spin up a new survey at the end of the project because you got your collation wrong, and that could have been fixed by just changing your partial containment of databases. So contained databases are awesome. Power Azure SQL. So use them. And if you don't, make sure that you specify your collation. And if that's a problem, make sure if it's a database level collation, specify it. Write it down there, this database. And if you ask that question, are there any special collations that you have for your databases, dear vendors? And if the vendor says no, and it's not in here, then guess what? When it goes wrong and you're stuck in this project and you're crying yourself asleep at night going, oh no, this is not working out, and it's so bad, then you can go, oh, but they didn't specify it. It's not a requirement. Okay, that's all right. I'm okay. They have to fix it. They have to specify a requirement. They have to tell me what they want so I can fix it. These things, as boring as it seems, is the single most important thing that you will ever do in any SQL project, is to write down what's your plans. Write down your network firewall rules. They're going to print out this list and give it to the network guys, and they're going to say, if your port's not on here, then sorry, they're not going to open it again. Yeah, or they might open it in 3 weeks from now, because that's when the next firewall change is due. Oh, you have to cut over tomorrow? Oh, sad, so sorry. You have to wait 3 weeks. Now I have to go explain to project manager why you're going to be late because you didn't specify the right firewall ports. But if it's in this list and then it's not working, then they can push through an emergency change and get it up and running just before your cutover. So you have to specify this. You have to tell folks this is what you need. You have to build up this information yourself. If you don't have it, you have to ask real nicely and someone will help you with it. But this stuff is available. You don't have to be alone going through this on your own, suffering, right? What does your operational considerations look like? Okay, great. You're going to give them a new SQL environment. What are they going to do with it, right? Okay, who's going to look after it? Who's going to water and feed it? Who's going to make sure that the stuff doesn't break? And when it breaks, they're happy to take a call 2 in the morning to fix it. Have we thought about that? Because you're delivering the SQL project. What are their DBAs doing? Are they project DBAs? Or are they operationally responsible for this? Is there a different vendor responsible for this? You have to ask those questions, right? How are you mapping your SQL servers? Where are you backing up? What's your backup time look like? What are you using for backup? Are you using Ola? Are you using a different Veeam solution? Are you using Rubrik? What are you using? Specify it. Specify it in this document. It becomes a requirement. The client can sign it off. And if it doesn't work, then you're like, oh, backup's not my problem, mate. It's like, you agreed to this, right? It's like, it's not being funny, but you have to specify this stuff. Because as you specified at the end, when you want to make sure you did the right thing, you can go through this document and go like, yeah, I did this, I did this, yeah, I did this, yeah, this is fine. Yeah, okay, Ola Hallengren is installed on the servers. Yes, it's scheduled. Yes. Donut time, right? It's like, it's really simple to go through this stuff, but if you don't take it out of your brain and put it on paper, you're going to miss it. What are they doing for monitoring? What are they doing for alerting? Are you looking for all the alerts? Are you looking for alerts? Is this everything here? Are you doing antivirus exclusions? This is a requirement. Please make sure that's excluded. When you do large projects, these simple things, antivirus can trip you up because you haven't thought about it, right? That's all these things. Those are small things that you add on. So when I look at this, you know, if this documents like this is our way of going through, you know, not breaking stuff. It's simple. I never, ever, ever, ever in my professional capacity ever want to be in a position again like I was in, where I was sitting there and I'm like, oh well, kind of I kind of know it's wrong, but you know, I'm gonna try and fix it. I don't want to be in there again. Never ever. Right, so that's why I take a lot of effort to find kind of a framework of how do we not break projects. It's real simple. Assume everything will break because it's gonna. Everything's gonna break. It's gonna be horrible, and you're gonna lose sleep. And I like my weekends. I like sleeping. I don't want to sleep. So if you assume it's going to break, when you go through your requirements in your head and on paper, you're going to say, what if it breaks? It's a recurring thing. What if it's breaking? Because that's the thing that's going to bite you. Document everything. Like I just showed you, just make sure you document it. It doesn't have to be fancy. Make sure you document it and make sure someone signs it off, like a signature on a piece of paper to say, yes, we agree with this design document as it's looking in this stage and this date, right? Because then when something goes wrong, you can go back to them and say, oh, look, you signed it. It's fine. It's your problem, not mine, right? It sounds horrible, but that's how you protect yourself as a consultant, and clients respect you more for that than if you go soft and go, oh, let's fix it. Be firm.
And the way you explain to them that it's their fault and they sign the document determines if they return business.
Exactly. Exactly. You know, so you have to, it's real simple, right? So make sure they sign it, make sure that you design it, and make sure that you build what you design. If they agree to 2014, you've had the fight for 2014. When they're done and you build 2016, and they're going to go, what's wrong? You didn't build what you designed. So build what you design, even if it's wrong. If the client agreed to it and you had the discussions, then it's fine. I've built some pretty poor solutions, what I view as poor